Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner U podcast. I am Paul O'Need, and today, as always, we are brought to you by Coach's Corner University. Be sure to take advantage of our podcast 300 discount code to save $300 off lifetime access to the Education Collective platform with close to 200 hours of continuing education, lectures, and savings on our courses. We're moving to a subscription model very soon. So if you do have lifetime access, you maintain it throughout. We're also sponsored by TC Nutrition, Barefoot Shoes, and Bacon and Barbells. You can find links to those in the description below. Today, I am joined by Quinn Hood. Quinn and I met last April at an NCI event. He was a personal trainer up in Erie and looking to, branch out and see how he could impact the world with fitness. We linked up again as part of my mentorship program, and he has since friggin' killed it. So Quinn, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
My pleasure. I was really excited when you signed on with the mentorship, mostly because, we just vibed on so many levels in terms of the way that we view fitness. Do you want to give the listeners a bit of a background into, your history and how you got into personal training and now online coaching?
Yeah. So I started lifting when I was 13 to get better at football. That was my whole childhood was kind of athletics. So that's what got me in the gym. And as soon as I hit the gym and hit the bench press, it was just full send from there. It was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I got to the point where I was literally playing football just to have a reason to keep lifting.
Just for bench press, playing football just for bench press.
I do like to squat.
Okay.
So that was part of it as well. So it really kind of morphed into that. And then whenever the athletic career kind of ended after college, the fitness thing was just part of what I was able to continue to do, to have that outlet, to use my physical skills, to push myself, all of that stuff. So fast forward to about 29 or 30, I was working in the corporate world. We were working from home. I got really, really into fitness podcasts and learning as much as I could and different bodybuilding, strength stuff. And I was like, you know what? I feel like I know a lot and I really love this stuff. What if I could do it on my own? So I transitioned to coaching part-time. I'd personal train early in the morning and then work out and then go home and, work my corporate job until I was able to build that business up and was able to quit the corporate world, become a coach full time, and just really run with that from there. And, once I kind of got that taste of coaching and what it was like, oh, I need to be doing this. It was like, I couldn't turn it off and come home and work a boring job that I wasn't interested in. I was like, I need to be doing this stuff all day long. So it's just kind of grown from there.
What was your corporate job?
I did benefits administration. So I calculated pension benefits and sent out paperwork.
Super fun.
It was amazing.
Yeah, super fun. When you went through this, the first career transition from corporate to personal training, were you married at that point already?
No, I had been with my partner for 9 years at that point.
Okay.
And then we got married because I quit my corporate job and lost my benefits. So
good for you.
It was just something it wasn't even like a thought. We were like, oh yeah, we'll do this. It was just, we just had never had that push to get married. We were very happy with where we were. Nothing really changed, but it was just like, okay, now we need to do this for benefits purposes.
Yeah. The reason I ask is, a lot of people are worried if they go through some sort of big career transition. Maybe there's a transition of financial roles within the relationship. Maybe give the listeners, knowing that a lot of the listeners to this podcast are young coaches, how did you guys go about navigating that? Because that's a really challenging conversation to have.
Mm-hmm. It was definitely not easy. I'm very grateful and privileged to have a partner that wanted the best for me and she was in a position that she could help support that goal. Because, I
Mm.
mean, none of us, when you get into coaching at first, especially, it's like you're not going to be making big bucks right from the start. And we knew that.
I want to highlight that.
Yeah,
Yes, this is true. You will not be a millionaire right off the
no.
bat.
So there is definitely that transition period. So you have to be prepared for that. And we certainly were.
Mhm.
I was lucky enough to, like I said, I worked part time. So as I transitioned to a full time position, I had built up a lot of goodwill with the gym that I was working at. And they offered me like a salaried position, a management sort of position
Mhm.
right off the bat to switch full time. So I was able to have a little bit more security in that as well, which was really
For
nice for
sure.
me. And something that, you know, as a young coach coming into this, it's like that financial security piece. It's like it's really really big for your mental health, your just everything that you're trying to do when you're trying to build your business. Not knowing where your next paycheck might be coming from is definitely a stressful time. So yeah, I would definitely just make sure that you're prepared for that and that you do this at the right time.
Yeah, and I want to highlight too, like you were like late 20s, 30 years old, like you've already gone through that period of your life where you can be a little bit more risk taking. You can be a little bit more, fly off the handle, go push your dreams. But when you're 30 years old, you have a partner, you guys have probably a home. Like there's a lot of other things that go into a career change that I don't think a lot of people talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a similar position where when I made my career transition, I was still working in the corporate world. I took the time to build up the roster. And while you're doing that, you're working 14, 16-hour days because you still owe your corporation job 8 hours of your time every day.
Mm-hmm.
How do you build a roster of clients and that goodwill with the gym during that few hours outside? Um, and you have to have the support of a partner, not only financially, but also to like pick up the slack around the house and all the other stuff that comes along with a relationship. So I'm glad you had that support and you're in that position again where you're looking to make that transition. Uh, I feel like it might be a little bit easier this time because you guys have already done it once.
Yeah, it's
Was that,
it.
was
Yeah,
it?
it's a different type of transition, right? Because when you're
Mm,
doing the in person, like when I transitioned from the corporate world to in person coaching, like I said, we had been working from home for like 2 years at that point. We're very used to being together all the time, having time to having time to do things around the house, all that kind of stuff. And then when I transitioned back outside, going to the gym every day, and like you said, putting in those 10, 12-hour days at the gym, trying to build a book of business and do all that kind of stuff, that was a big transition that we had to, figure out and work together on. And there's been, different things that we've had to grow from. And then
hmm
transitioning from, the in-person space to the online space, it's like, oh great, I'll have all this freedom, I'll be home all the time. But it's like, oh, I'm constantly working on this business because
Yep.
if I'm not getting paid. Like
Well, you lose the stability,
yeah.
right? Like, so you said a big piece that allowed you to move from the corporate world to personal training was you had that salaried management position.
Mm-hmm.
And moving from a salaried management position to a contract personal trainer and then now an online coach, your entire book of business is reliant on your ability to go out and find those people.
Right.
So it's like, it's both incredibly liberating and you have a ton of freedom, but there's a lot of pressure associated with that as well. Um, I feel like, well, no, I worked with you, so I saw the transition. So I know for a fact it wasn't truly that difficult for you. Um, but what was going through your head at that moment, knowing that, okay, I'm giving up this salaried position? Was it a motivator? Was it fear? Was there fear there? What was going on?
um it was it was definitely a motivator. And I think the reason is because I'm not motivated by like that short term gain or that short term stability in a way. Um,
Mhm.
how do I want to say this? I knew that being in that position, I was safe and I didn't have the room. Like I wasn't going to grow in that safe space. There was a ceiling there that I could hit. And then online, now there's no ceiling. Now it's all
Yeah.
me. It's all whatever I want to do. I can scale it to wherever I want. I can do all these different things outside of, the confines of a business and what they allow you to do financially, or whatever it may be. It's like I'm doing it all for me. Now I have no ceiling. Now the room for growth is through the roof, and I can really expand and just build in the way that I want to. And that was really the motivator to move. As I've moved through my careers, I've always been focused on like, where's that next piece of growth for me in my career,
Mhm.
and not just how can I be more quote unquote, financially successful.
Yeah, and I think that that's important to highlight because there are a lot of people who get into online coaching because they see the paychecks. They're like, "Oh, I can make X amount per month and I can make this amount per year." It's like you can, but as with anything, there's trade-offs. And I'm glad we were able to dive into the discussion on like what your mindset was during that process because yeah, online coaching does provide you an incredible freedom where there is no ceiling, but there's also no safety net.
Yeah.
And I think that holds a lot of people back from making the jump and actually pursuing something that's meaningful for them.
And I was thinking a lot about this leading up to this conversation of, when I made that jump, why I did. Um, I think one of the biggest things was like I knew that I was a good coach and I had the ability to connect with people because I put myself in that position. I went out and coached people in person on the floor. Like I did it part time.
Mhm.
I was like, hey, let me test this out. Let me see if this is something that is for me and that I can actually help people. Like I knew I had the knowledge. I had been able to build my own self up to, a strength level and a physique level that I was proud of, but I was like, can
Mhm.
I actually help other people? Can I actually help them do this? So kind of cutting your teeth on the gym floor, I think makes a big difference. And learning how to connect with people and building a network of connections that allow you to say, hey, I'm doing my own online business. Like, do you want to work together in this respect? Like I had connections built up that I felt
Yeah.
confident that I could get started somewhere. I wasn't just starting from scratch. So I think
Mhm.
those couple of things are really important too, because I don't know how you feel like the online fitness space, at least on like what you see from Instagram, is you see all these influencers that clearly have not really coached people and aren't
Oh yeah.
posting people's results, showing that they're actually doing things for other people. They're just building their own physique or, telling you how to do exercises perfectly or whatever. But so I think that was a big piece of the confidence to be able to say, like, I can do this online. I know I can. Um,
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I think the more experience that you have in person, the better equipped you are to communicate online because, when you're in person, you're with that person one on one for an hour. So you have to be able to form a relationship. And you quickly realize that it doesn't really matter how much like book knowledge that you have. And it's funny, like I've had incredibly successful coach after coach after coach after coach at every level, whether it be, in the online space, in the personal training space, in the collegiate strength and conditioning space. Like the last guest I interviewed was a head strength coach at Alabama. And every single person along that way tells me coaching is about relationships. It's about people. And your book knowledge isn't what's going to hold you back.
mhm.
Um, do you feel like personal training just equipped you perfectly to transition?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I came into the coaching space like, oh, I got all this knowledge. I'm just going to give it to people, and it's going to be like this light bulb moment that their head's going to explode and they're just going to get all these great results. And I realized that wasn't the case. Like
Mhm.
you can tell people until they're blue in the face what to do, but unless you build that connection and find the ways to help that person where they're at in the way that they need it, it's not going to make a lick of difference. And I struggled to make that transition at first, but once I started to get those reps in and realized that that connection piece was really the most important part, and coaching the person, not just coaching fitness or nutrition was was the biggest shift, that was the light bulb moment for me that went, oh, like this is why coaching is so important. This is why coaching is such an amazing job, to get to connect with these people. It's not just sharing knowledge, which is it's really cool, and it makes it a really rewarding experience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. The other piece that I wanted to highlight about the journey to from like even from corporate to personal training, and then from personal training as a employee of a gym to in the online space, is you have to create a brand that is Quinn, right? You have to create something that is your own, something that is aligned with your values.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to discuss like what your process was in going through that. Obviously, the name of your company, Fifth Power Fitness, people might not understand what that means, but that's also a conversation
Yeah.
piece,
Yeah.
right? Um, when you decided to go out on your own and go through that branding exercise, walk me through that.
So it started with the name. So my real name is Quinto, which means
Mhm.
fifth in Italian, which is half of my heritage, where that name comes from. Um, so that was a way for me to carry on that name in a way that sounded cool. I couldn't find something that sounded good with Quinto Fitness. So Fifth Power Fitness was kind of born out of that. And then I was kind of building out like, what's my message? What is my brand? And in lining up with that whole, coaching the person and making this more a lifestyle thing than just a strength, muscle, nutrition, it was like, how do I make this a holistic approach? And that's where I kind of came up with what I deem the 5 powers of fitness, which are strength, muscle, nutrition, intention, and action. And those 5 things all coming together to build a holistic approach to your fitness journey to help you get results and actually change your life through fitness, instead of just using it kind of as a means to an end of I'm going to get to X body weight and I'm going to be great. So I think it was just a means of building out that brand and my holistic approach and changing your lifestyle. And that was kind of, my whole journey has been figuring that out, all these things out along the way of, I got into the gym to get stronger and then get jacked. And then I started to figure out nutrition. And then it was like, well, how do I maintain the discipline? What are the things that I'm taking away from fitness that I can apply to the rest of my life? And that's where that intention, that mindset, living your life intentionally, and, taking action and actually doing the thing. Like, I can remember back, I was in my mid 20s, like kind of dabbling in this fitness thing, like basically just kind of posting random stuff online, hoping to get discovered. Um, and like, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to get like a sponsorship. I finally have abs. So I'll just keep posting that.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
That's all you need is abs and an Instagram account.
Yeah.
Sponsor the kid.
So, but it wasn't until I took the action of putting myself in there into the coaching space, doing the fitness thing, getting real results. It wasn't until I took the action of quitting my job and building my own online business and hooking up with you and doing all that kind of stuff that helped. That was that next piece of like, I need to actually take the action. I can give you all the information. I can tell you the
Mhm.
macros. I can tell you the workout plan. I can tell you how to execute it. But until you go and do it, it
Mhm.
doesn't, nothing is going to matter. And I have firmly believed, like a lot of people will say like, oh, I need more motivation. I need more this. And it's like, I always tell people motivation is the result of action, not the other way around. So you start doing the thing, build some momentum, make some progress, and that gives you the motivation to keep progressing and shows you that you can do it. If you're just waiting for, that quote tweet on Instagram to tell you to get in the gym, it's never gonna be enough.
Well, whenever I think about motivation, I always think about like, back in the day when you're a kid and you're super impressionable. You're like just watching Ronnie Coleman and Dorian Yates videos before you go in for every session. You're like, yeah, let's fucking go, buddy. Yeah, buddy. But I totally agree with you. I mean, motivation is a consequence of action. Motivation is a consequence of the evidence that you can have success, and you just build upon that. But you can't have that success unless you try first. Um, I also love that you pulled out like these five powers are a direct reflection of your personal journey and your values. And that is something that I did want to talk about today is like, you've shared a little bit online about issues with body dysmorphia. You mentioned already like things with mental health and how your fitness journey has assisted with that. Can you talk me through a little bit or share a little bit about those influences on the way that you coach?
Yeah. I think specifically with like the mental health aspect of it, when I think back to why the gym was so important to me, it's because that was the place that I was the most confident. I was able to go in there, and if I put in the work, I could. I always felt good. I always felt at home in the gym. And looking back, I was a super, super insecure young person. Um, you wouldn't know it by my exterior. I had like that kind of cocky, arrogant sort of thing that, typical kind of jock has, which was really just hiding a lot of insecurities. But the gym was that place that was like, this is home. This is where I feel the most confident. This gives me that confidence. And then I was able to continue to, build on that and take that outside of the gym. So that's where I think my mental health was a huge piece of it. And then, learning the discipline, learning the hard work that the the barbell doesn't lie, the barbell doesn't discriminate, the barbell doesn't care who you are. It's what are you doing with it? What are you pushing yourself to do when you're in the gym? And that if you put in that work, it continues to be it can continues to allow you to, get better. So that kind of taught me that discipline and that work ethic aspect of it. Um, the body dysmorphia journey was a really long one. I was always kind of like a stocky little kid, kind of pudgy at most times in my life. Um, Never had abs until I was 26 or so. Um, so I was the kid in like elementary school that couldn't do a chin up because he couldn't handle his own body weight. But I was a good athlete, so it was
Mhm.
weird. I never looked the way that I felt about how
Right.
I could perform. And that was a struggle for me for a really long time for a bunch of different reasons. And it was always like, how can I manipulate this thing or that thing? And so that was a continuous journey throughout my life. And then I went through like a low carb sort of keto phase in my life. And finally, like, because I was like, oh, that was kind of where I discovered nutrition. And I was like, oh, this is going to be the answer. I'm finally going to lose weight and get lean. And I stuck to it, and I did. I got lean, but I realized I was like, I'm still not happy about this. I'm still not happy
Mhm.
about the way that I look. I want to change things. And then it was like, okay, cool. I'm lean, but I can't get any stronger and I can't build any more muscle, and I want to get bigger. So it was like, okay, change my nutrition, and I continue to change my body composition up and up and up, and or different ways, building muscle, getting lean, trying to figure it out. And every time I got to a certain point, I was like, I'm still not satisfied. I'm still not satisfied. And the
Mm.
realization was, oh, I'm never going to be a fully finished product.
So I'm laughing not because of what you're saying, but because whenever someone brings up body dysmorphia, I think of you remember the influencer Dom Mazzetti?
Yeah,
He's like, "Welcome to the gym. From now on, you'll be forever small."
exactly. In a way. And, but that was empowering and liberating for me. It's like, I don't ever need to be a finished product. I can be exactly where I'm at right now and focus on what are my real goals and values at hand. What is it that I really value? Do I really value what I look like? And I say that from a privileged position of, I know that I look good enough. At least in my, like, I'm trying not to be like weird about it, but you know what I mean?
No, no, no.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. Like, and I do really like the comment about you're never a finished product. Because for me, that's always been that. Like, I've dealt with the same things. Like, very overweight as a kid. Um, Never had abs until I was like in my later 30s, or not later 30s, probably late. I think I was 29 or 30 when I first like dieted down and actually got lean.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I was kind of in the same boat. It's like you try to find the thing to get you to where you want to
Mm-hmm.
be. And I think a lot of our clients are searching for the thing, that catalyst, that answer. But once you get to a point where you realize, like, I'm never going to have the answer and I'm never going to be a finished product. But if I keep doing the things that are required for me to get a little bit better every day in all aspects of my life, as a person, as a partner, as a business owner, as a trainer, all of these things add up. I had this conversation actually with a client yesterday, where she was talking about, like, real change doesn't happen in one felt swoop. And it got me thinking because, well, real change, like change on a macro level, is just the accumulation of really, really tiny, almost insignificant decisions
Mm-hmm.
over a large period of time. And then all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm a different human being.
Yeah.
And you're still like, I'll be honest, like, I'm still not happy. Like, I used to think back in the day, if I can get to 220 with abs, I'll be happy. Then I got to 220 with abs and I was like, I'm small. I was like, okay, if I can get to 240 with abs, I'll be happy. And then I'm 240 with abs. I'm like, still kind of small.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, or I'm not strong enough, or I'm not this yet, this. And where it always came back to me is like, I'm not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
So always being that work in progress.
And embracing that work in progress and being like,
Mm,
that is, I enjoy that work now. It's like, oh, okay, like what can I do? Like my focus right now is getting as strong as humanly possible, as strong as I possibly can. So it's like, okay, how much stronger can I get? And what are the things that I need to do to reach that goal? And I don't know when that goal will be reached. I don't know yet. I'm still, just enjoying the process of getting a little bit stronger each time I go into the gym, or each meet and each powerlifting meet, improving just a little bit, or whatever it might be. So I'm enjoying that process and knowing, like, okay, at some point maybe my goals will change, or maybe my life will change in a way that now my goals have to shift, and that's just fine.
mm,
So I'm going to embrace all the aspects of that process and just continue to work on what are the things that are most important to me. It's that I'm focusing on my health and improving my health physically. Uh, like you said, being a better partner, being my personal growth, my mental health, working on all those things that we kind of talked about already.
mm.
Building my business. Like, what are the things that matter to do those things in my life that are actually important, not just what I look like?
Okay, I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit because there's a lot of things to tease out of
Yeah.
that. So here's what I'm going to push back. So you said one of your priorities is getting as strong as you possibly can for you.
Mm-hmm.
This has been on my mind a lot, obviously, with the injury that I went
Yeah.
through. My goal whenever I got into training was always just to be, I want to see how strong I can get. So part of me dealing with this injury, understanding that I haven't had a PR in probably 8 years, I found it. But I had to actually destroy myself to realize that I had found it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a bit of, there's zero regret at all because I got so much out of the process. But at some point, we do get to that area where, all right, I found how strong I can get. And so then it's a shift of, well, there's still other things that I can improve upon,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's skill, whether it's hypertrophy, whether it's work capacity. There's always physical attributes that you can continue to improve upon. Where the question is within that process is, what trade-offs are you willing to make?
Right.
And we can use your journey. We can use any of our clients' experiences. Actually, I'll frame it to you this way. So I have a client right now. Her goal is fat loss. She's going on a trip to Disney with her family. And I'm very big on giving my clients the information that they need so that they can make the best decisions possible. So she said, "Do you have any tips on nutrition while traveling?" And I could have said, "Oh, absolutely. I have a webinar. I filmed it. Here it is. It has all the answers that you need."
Mm-hmm.
But my response to her was, "I have some information for you, but first, what would you consider to be successfully handling your nutrition on the trip?"
Yeah.
So, knowing full well that if she wants to be perfect, it's going to be inconvenient.
Yeah.
So, the trade off for her is a bit of enjoyment with the family is traded off for hitting the nutrition, and that cost is inconvenience. So when you're going through this, let's say, value assessment in your own journey or the journey with your clients, talk to me a little bit about how you factor in trade-offs.
Yeah, I think one of the most important pieces of setting goals is thinking about like, what am I willing to sacrifice for this?
Okay.
And I have this conversation with a lot of people because I work with the general population still in person, and working with people in their 40s, 50s who are just here to kind of get in better shape and feel better about themselves. And it's like, they'll tell you a weight goal or a body fat percentage goal. And it's like, okay, let me tell you what it's going to take for you to get there at this point in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Are you really willing to do this work? Are you willing to be this strict to your diet at this age in your life? Like, you want to go to your kid's birthday party and not eat cake at all? Or like, that kind of like, that's just kind of an example, but are you willing to be that strict to reach this goal? Or is there a goal that's maybe 75% of the way there, but allows you to still live your life in certain ways? And I think that is also important.
Well, I think the caveat there is time. So if you have someone who says, "I want to lose 20 pounds in 20 weeks," you're like, "Cool. So we have to be in a 3,500 calorie deficit every week for the next 20 weeks in order to get
Yeah.
there." That's going to leave you with X amount of flexibility. But what if we bump that 20 to 40 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and then we only have to be in a 1750 deficit?
Yeah.
Maybe that's a little bit more sustainable for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the conversation about expectations that needs to be had. And I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah. And, what is that thing that you'll then be able to sustain? Because if I put you in that 3,500 calorie deficit for 20 weeks, did we actually, and you're like, okay, I'm committed to being super strict to this, but there's no possible way that you can sustain it. It's never going to last. So you're not building
Mm-hmm.
the habits and the behaviors that are necessary to actually make that lasting change that's going to keep that 20 pounds off. But if we do it, like you said, in a smaller window with a diet that works a little bit better in your lifestyle, it takes longer, but you learn more and you actually sustain it for a longer period of your life. That's great. Or then we've built the habits and behaviors that now we can shift the goal. Once you lose 20 pounds, maybe you're like, okay, cool. Now I want to put on 10 pounds of muscle. Now we have
Mm-hmm.
habits and behaviors in place that we can make that change. And you're making that decision from a place of understanding of the work that it's going to take.
I love that. And I totally agree. Where we'll bring that conversation back to business is, how do you sell someone on that? Because that's not sexy. And if they're coming to you with a goal that they want to achieve, every salesperson you will speak to is going to say, "Promise, promise, promise."
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And like, I'm still selling you the result, correct?
Yeah.
For sure. But I think what I try to do is, my best clients, the clients that have gotten the best results from me, are the people that have embraced this process and this way of thinking. So this is how I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you these things, but this is how we're going to shift that perspective to make this a lasting change. And I'm not just here to sell you for 12 weeks of coaching to get to, a certain body fat percentage. And then, we're just going to be done and you're just going to go back and live your life. And I'm just going to, so it's showing the results of the people that have done it, and the people that have embraced it and done the best, I think is that's the way that I try to do it. And I
Mhm.
use myself as an example. Cause like I said, I've been lifting now for 20 years, and again, I'm not a finished product. I'm not done. I'm still, going through this process with you, and helping them understand that the clients that do the best do X, Y, and Z, and have this mindset shift. And that leads into kind of those 5 powers of fitness of, this is how I want you to set this up. This is how I want you to think about these things. And then we're going to implement that into your life.
Oh, I love that. So your goal is to rely on evidence with past clients and like evidence with yourself to sell that not so sexy thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like I want to highlight that as a young coach, if you don't have any evidence, your best evidence is you. So one of the questions that I always ask any mentee that walks through the door is like, are you a product of your product?
Mm-hmm.
Can you be the sales marketing? Can you represent exactly what you're selling? And so with the coaching, it's like, well, I've done it for myself. I've done it. And now you can say I've done it for others because you have that
Mm-hmm.
experience. And that client in front of you is gonna be like, oh, so like there's, there's a stopgap here where like he knows how to do it because he's done it. And I'm sure you can give the contact information for the people that you've done it for, and they would endorse your services. Um, but what I really wanted to highlight in that process is honesty builds trust.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to start off a relationship with a client on the right foot, it has to start with building trust. So I think that honesty piece to say, hey, you might have this goal, but I don't think you're ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't think you have the tools required to get you there and keep yourself there. Would you be more comfortable working on those tools and taking a little bit longer?
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, it's their choice. They can say no. But what that does for you, it's a pre-qualification to say, well, if this person isn't process oriented and they're not really open to developing that process orientation mindset, it's probably not the client that's for me.
Yeah. And I think a big piece of that is, you know, talking to that person and listening and
Mm-hmm.
meeting them where they're at. So if I have somebody that comes to me and, they haven't ever done anything with their nutrition, like they're
Mm-hmm.
like, I've never tracked a calorie. I don't even know what that means. I'm not going
And
to,
there are people out there like that, man.
yes,
Like there
oh,
are people out
100%.
there.
And that was again, going back to that, getting those reps in, I realized that very quickly. Like, oh, people are not thinking about fitness and nutrition all day the way that I am.
No, not even close.
So it was like, hey, I want you to eat more protein. And I've had people ask me, what's protein? And I'm like,
Oh yeah, me
oh,
too.
okay. So like, I'm not going to hand that person calories and macros and tell them, hey, you need to track everything that you eat on this app. I'm like, here's the kind of things that we're going to do. It's like, well, what are you eating on a daily basis? Okay. How can we just change those foods to make them a little bit better for you and get you in the habit of thinking about what you're eating and eating more of the right things, and not, you know, a wholesale meal plan and, like I said, calories and macros for that person, because they're going to fail that. They're not there yet. We will progress there as you develop these habits. But if I don't meet that person where they're at and explain that process to them of what that looks like and why I'm recommending what I'm recommending, it's not going to, it's just not going to end well.
Okay, so I there's a few things that definitely need to be highlighted. The first one is like meeting them where they're at, right? It's like you can't teach someone you can't teach a baby how to sprint until it learns how to walk.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're getting someone that's, an infant when it comes to nutrition, or maybe has never touched a weight in their life, or just start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't, like, all right, maybe we don't start with a meal plan. Maybe I just give you a food list and say, hey, these are proteins, these are carbs, these are fats, go.
Yeah. Include one of these in each meal and we'll
Yep.
see what happens. We'll go from there.
I deal with this a lot because I've started getting a lot more clients who want to improve their relationship with food. And I think that, and I think this is a great talking point for you, especially coming from the body dysmorphia side of things, is like, those people are not women. So these people that are coming to me and understanding that they have a poor relationship with food, you would think, oh, it's a woman who's been dieting their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
Yeah.
All dudes. And you know what? A lot of really jacked dudes,
Mm-hmm.
which was surprising to me initially, but then I realized, like, oh, no, you're that guy too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We have the awareness of it at this point. I think with most guys, they're not willing to admit that they have that problem or self-aware enough to realize it. Or I know a lot of guys that like they still think they're 25 as far as their diet is concerned. And they can do
or 14 and eat cereal.
Yeah, like I've had, people that are eating like Pop-Tarts for breakfast still in like their 20s and 30s.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, wow. Like, but it's just, we're not taught that. And that's like, oh, I was just always able to do this. Like I ate Pop-Tarts every day when I was a kid. I didn't know, but
dude, sorry to
no,
interrupt.
you're good.
You know what fucking boggles my mind is like, people come to me like, yeah, I want to be jacked. I'm like, cool. So when you're a kid, part of our human growth cognitively is mirroring, right? We mirror behaviors, we mirror actions. This is one of the things that we talk about with a lot of our clients who have children, is like, if your child sees you weighing yourself every day and counting your macros, these are things you have to have conversations with them about, because they will think that's normal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mirroring is huge. We don't lose that ability. So when I have someone's like, yeah, I want to be jacked, I'm like, cool, what are you eating every day? And they come to me like, I have Pop-Tarts for breakfast. I have some Sour Patch Kids during training because, intra-workout carbs. And I'm like, I would like for you to point me out one single person who is jacked who does that.
Yeah.
And they're like, like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah. Yeah.
It kills me. Sorry. That was just front of my mind. I had to interject.
No, you're good. It is kind of crazy. And like I said, when you finally get these guys and, you can make them realize that they do need to change the way that they're doing things and that you've done it. Like there's so many dudes in the gym that are like, that I've had in my life that are like, hey bro, how do I look like you? And I'm like, are you sure you want like the full rundown of what that is? Cause it's 20 years of training. It's, all these different things, and they're not there yet. They want that result, but they don't realize the work that goes into it. And that relationship with food is, I think, really huge, because there's so many things that people aren't willing to like give up or just do differently. They're like, no, this is what I eat. This is what, my wife makes at home, so I just eat it. Or this is what this person does and makes, or I don't have time. And it's like, and then they just end up overeating, not thinking about how much they're actually eating. And then it just kind of snowballs into this thing. And then they just can't give it up. And, I still have issues with overeating at times. And
Same.
like, so, when I go out on the weekends, my hunger signals are not like everybody else's. I don't have the satiation.
You don't have the off switch?
The satiation signal is just not quite there. I also have a very addictive personality in that way, but so I can kind of relate to that. So I have I have tools that I use to make sure that I either can leave myself some extra room to have those calories, or, ways of portion controlling myself, because that's really hard. So just finding ways to make it work for you, and actually, but the first thing is sitting down and admitting, like, okay, I need to change the way that I'm doing it, and realizing that you have that issue, and then setting up your environment for success. I think that's kind of where I was going with it, is if you have food issues, you can't have the food in front of you. You can't have it in your house. And
At least not initially.
Yeah, at first. But I think that's what a lot of people do, is like, I'll have a lot of people with kids and stuff, and they're like, oh, we got all these snacks for the kids, or like, I finished my kid's plate. And it's like, you don't have to do that. So, or just switch the food, like all kinds of different ways to, manipulate your environment to make it as easy as possible, instead of.
But even that's a learned behavior, right? Even that, like, oh, well, when I was a kid, my mom said I had to finish my plate before I could move from the table. Yeah. So that learned behavior is like, oh, my kid didn't finish their food, I have to finish it because we don't want to waste food.
Yeah.
That's a tough
one.
Our
friend Jared's very good about that.
Listen,
his Instagram's incredible, dude.
Jared Hamilton's been on the podcast. I actually sat down with him for an hour last week and just shot the shit. He's so fucking funny, but he's so on point with a lot of these limiting behavior exercises, in that a lot of what we do, and you and I have both been through a lot of therapy, so we know, like, a lot of what we do is shaped by our childhood and our experiences. And bringing it back to, the 5 powers, that intention piece starts with awareness.
Yeah.
So you cannot have intention behind your behaviors unless you're actually aware of what's driving those behaviors. And you said it early on in our conversation, and I meant to tease it out. You said listening to our clients, not listening to respond, but listening to understand. That is what starts that trust building, that relationship building perspective, because even within that, you want your clients to be honest with you. You want your clients to be vulnerable with you. You want your clients to be able to admit their failures, admit their shortcomings. And you want them to be in a position where they trust you with that information, that you won't judge them. And what you're saying is, you're not going to judge them because you are them, or you have been them in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what I was going to say, is like, using that learned experience and that emotional experience. Like, I think about this a lot, because a lot of my clients, like, they're not powerlifters. They don't care about squatting 500 pounds. They don't really care about how jacked they are. Like, those are my concerns personally, but I need to relate to you on this emotional level. Like, I'm showing you the mental and emotional process that it took me to get from that insecure little boy with body dysmorphia to this 33-year-old guy who is enjoying really being strong. And how did I get from there to here? Like, how did I learn throughout this process to love myself and help myself be able to get this result? So that's the level that I'm connecting on. It's not just like, oh yeah, well, yeah, I'll get you jacked, I'll get you strong. Like, that's great, but anybody can do that. AI can do that.
Oh man, we're not going to get into AI, although, but so this is another conversation I have with a lot of young coaches as well, as they start building their brand, as they start, building a coaching roster. I had this conversation with our new coach, Amber, who just came to work with us. And Amber, listen, she's a young coach, but in terms of her athletic prowess, like, she's going to be an IFBB pro very, very soon. And what I told her was, most of the clients that are coming to work with you want to be you. In some capacity, they see you. So if we're on a spectrum here, and like on the left-hand side is the total beginner who has no experience. And on the right-hand side is you. They're coming somewhere along that spectrum, but ultimately they want to be you.
Yeah.
So what I want to highlight is the way in which you form that relationship and that trust is that showing them that even though they're where they are now, You have gotten yourself to this spot on the spectrum, and you can lead them along that path. So you're building that relationship with empathy. And how we do that is, instead of saying, I would suggest that you do this, right? So say you're change your environment, as you mentioned before. Hey, I don't want you to have that food in the house right now. That's great advice. But you know what's better advice? Hey, you know what? I was in that same position. What I did was I actually stopped having that food in the house until I had control over it, and then slowly started having it in the house over time as I developed these behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
It's the exact same fucking
Yeah.
advice, but it's coming from the lens of, I've been there before. This is what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they're there. That's why they hired
Yeah.
you, is because they want to be you.
Yeah. And this is why it worked. I think is the important piece of it. Like I said, we have all the information. You have all the information, but connecting it to you and personalizing it to what you need, I think is where, coaching is really what makes the difference. Is like, when I'm listening to you talk, in my mind, I can kind of start to tease out why this is the behavior that is happening, and the things we need to do for you to change it, not just for me. So yeah, I think that's super important.
I love it. Talk to me a little bit about your personal goals, because one of the things I absolutely believe in is, as coaches, we need to be pushing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
When I see a fat nutrition coach or a weak strength coach or a small hypertrophy coach, I want to fucking choke them with everything in my house. Talk to me a little bit about your journey, your goals.
So, like I said, my journey started out in athletics. So I was always focused mostly on strength.
I'm talking about right
Right
now.
now.
Like, what are you pushing for right now?
So my goal is, like I said, to be as strong as possible. So right now I'm competing in powerlifting. My goal is currently to squat 525 at this next meet, which is in a week.
Hell yeah.
So I'm going to try and do that. Bench press, I don't really have a goal. I just need to hit 315 on the platform, because
Okay.
I've had a lot of issues with my upper body, shoulders, elbows, that have really held that back. So I'm just trying to finally hit what I want to hit on bench. And then we'll start to progress it from there. My deadlift, hit 600 on the platform. So those are my goals right now. As far as like strength is concerned, that's what I'm pushing myself for.
So 1450 total.
Yeah. I think I totaled 1405 my last meet. So
yeah, so just chipping away. How many meets have you done at this point?
2.
Oh, so
I'm still a baby.
You're still a baby.
Yeah.
You're still a baby.
Yeah. My first one was in April of last year, which I totaled like, I think it was 1300 or 13 something. And then I bumped that up to 14. So, trying to just keep going, see where that
I'll
goes.
tell you, expecting 100-pound PRs every time you step on the platform, probably not going to be a realistic expectation. But I will say that, having those priorities, and like seeing your clients seeing you push yourself, that again builds that trust, builds that relationship. And I think it's worth highlighting. What would be your, like, have you thought about, I want to reach X goal and then I'll be happy with my strength?
We kind of had this conversation a little bit in the past. I have very lofty numbers in mind that I could tell myself will be enough. But that's not the process for me.
I love it.
I don't actually care about the number at this point. I just care about continuing to get stronger, and continuing to push myself. And that's where, again, like, if you don't want to be a power lifter, if you don't want to squat 500 pounds, that's okay. I'm doing that for me. That's not my expectation of everybody else. I'm showing you my process and how I push myself to just be the
Mm-hmm.
strongest version of myself. That just happens to be where my strength is right now. So it's more of that mental process. And I talk a lot about value-based goal setting, and setting your values. And one of my main values is to maintain my physical independence for as long as possible. Like that's my fitness goal, because every time I look at, older people that come into the gym, or, my in-laws or my parents, it's like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. It's like, can you help me do this? I can't lift this thing anymore. I never want to be that person. So part of that is being the strongest person that I can be.
Right.
So that's why I'm doing it. So I don't really have, there's no goal where I'll say, yeah, I'll be happy. If I squat 600 pounds though, I
That's a pretty cool one.
yeah, like that
That's a
would be
pretty cool
cool.
one.
If I could do that, I would call myself super happy. I don't know if I'd quit, but I'd call myself super happy.
I remember my first 600-pound squat in competition took 9 seconds. I have it on video. It's a very, very long rep. 9
That's
seconds.
wild.
Let's get into some quick hit questions. The first one is, what's been your biggest win as a coach?
I think seeing the changes in people that they didn't come in for. Like,
Oh, okay.
people come in, like I said, for weight loss or muscle gain or whatever. And then they come to me later and they're like, oh my God, I didn't know that I could do this in my life. Or like, I have a client right now who, she changed her lifestyle by working with me and has completely changed her husband's health just by being that example in his life and doing those things. Like, that's a win for me. Like, seeing how
I
happy
love that.
she is for her husband's health and how she's been able to make that happen. Those are the things that are the most rewarding to me.
I love that. What's one thing that you started off believing, but quickly realized that it's not helpful?
Um, that just education on nutrition is not enough, that people's relationship with food and themselves has so much more to do with their nutrition than
Mm-hmm.
any calories, macros, anything I can give you. So we have to address those things and figure out ways around that. I thought for the longest time, I was like, oh yeah, I can just give people calories and macros. They'll hit them. They'll be fine. But there's so much more that goes into that coaching process that I
Mm-hmm.
really had to change the way that I think.
What were the last 3 books that you read?
Oh boy. I don't read enough books. Well,
Oh, so I called you out a little
yeah,
bit.
that's all right. The last book I read was Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey.
Great
I
book.
did like that book a lot. And that was, it resonated a lot with me because it was literally as I was making my transition to online coaching, I was like reading this
Mm-hmm.
book, and it was about like taking those opportunities when they come and being ready for them. So that was a huge one for me to hit at the right time for me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, other books that I've read. Yeah, like I can't even remember. I'll give a shout out to my favorite book is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson.
Great book.
I usually read that once a year. I think that book is awesome for everyone to read. And then I'll shout out Atomic Habits too, because that's my other favorite.
Oh, great
Yeah,
books. Okay, we're
yeah.
good. Did you read Green Lights or did you do the audiobook?
I read it. I read all of the books. Like I'm not an audiobook person.
No.
I should be because the problem is I read very slowly. I'm
Mm-hmm.
a slow reader, and the main time that I have to read is at night. So I'll get through like 3 pages and fall asleep. Um, so that's why it takes me forever to read a book. But yeah, that's one of my goals is to read more for sure.
The reason I asked about the audiobook is because when you listen to Green Lights in his like southern twang,
I bet it's very good.
it's friggin'
Yeah.
it was awesome. Another great audiobook that I did was I did Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck in audiobook. And I also did, as much as he's just like an annoying piece of shit, James Smith's book,
Mm,
This Is Not a Diet Book, was actually really good on
mm.
audiobook. All right. If you had a billboard on the side of the road with one thing on it for everyone to see, what would it be?
I've been thinking about this question since we scheduled this podcast.
Oh, yeah. It's a
It
good
is.
one.
It's a great question, and there's so many things I would love to, put on a billboard. I think the one thing that I always come back to is like the journey is the destination. Because at the end of the day, like nothing is going to change your life more than changing like those daily habits and really just embracing that process. And you realize, like you said, that really is the destination. Like every time I hit a PR in the gym, it's like I'm very proud of the work that was done to get there, but it's just like
Mhm.
now I'm on to the next thing. It's not that destination. You get there, but it's like the reward was all the work that you put in to get there.
Yeah, I love it. Since you mentioned PRs, I'm going to add another bonus question. What's your PR song? And yes, I will judge you.
Um, I don't know. It's I Love by Joyner Lucas.
Okay. Good song.
Yeah. That or Champions by NLE Choppa. I'm
All
a big
right.
hip hop rap guy in the gym.
White guy from Erie, PA,
I'm from
loves
Pittsburgh.
his hip.
I'm from Pittsburgh.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. Well, then why aren't you picking like Wiz Khalifa or Mac Miller?
Because those aren't PR songs. I
Yeah,
love
that's
Mac
true.
Miller. Don't get me wrong, but I'm chilling to Mac Miller.
That's true. That's true. Dude, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate
I
it.
appreciate it, man. This is awesome.
It's my pleasure. I'll have links to where everyone can find you in the show notes, but thank you everyone for listening. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one.